Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and I'm an idiot, and I actually have a little bit of a correction to make in this series. So in the past few videos that I've done of these, I've commented on all the players and how many games they've played and where that's ranked all time for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in general. That information that I gave you was incorrect. I was looking, the way I read it was completely wrong. I thought I was reading it as how many games they'd played all time, but it was how many games that they had played for that specific, category. So like how many games they had played like for all the running backs, receivers, and tight ends. So I have since gone back, looked through all of the entirety of its team, and I've since made the proper corrections. So Dave Moore, the tight end that I had mentioned that I had once thought was #1 all-time for most games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he is actually 3rd all-time. Jimmy Giles is 16th all-time. James Wilder is 20th all-time. Doug Williams is 105th all-time. Mike Evans is 127th all-time, and Mike Allstott is 7th all-time. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into the video. And actually, one more thing I want to say before I start this video is if you guys are enjoying this series, go ahead and hit the like button just so I know that people are enjoying this. And if I see that this video gets a lot of likes, I will continue to upload them. But anyway, enough of, retconning and shameless plugging. Let's get into the video, which is the greatest Tampa Bay Buccaneers of all time offensive line edition. That's right, I'm doing all 5 members of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line. The reason I am doing this is because you don't have a whole lot of talking points when you're talking about the offensive line because you can't really break down stats like that because, before, it's really hard to measure, pressure, who gives up the most pressures and who gives up the most sacks and stuff like that. So I've just kind of listed the top 5 offensive linemen, not top 5, total offensive linemen, but just kind of, top left tackle, top left guard, top center, top right guard, and top right tackle, and I'm just going to give you guys some information about them, talk about playoff games, stuff like that. So we're starting with left tackle, actually, and it is Paul Gruber. Now, Paul Gruber played his entire career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was actually the 4th overall pick in the 1988 NFL draft for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he actually played from 1988 all the way to 1999, so he was there for 11 years. That's actually a pretty long time. He ended up playing in 2 playoff games, and he was a 4-time All-Pro team player. I believe it was 3 second-team All-Pro awards and then 1 first-team All-Pro. So that's actually pretty impressive. And for Paul Gruber, it's really interesting because you could obviously label him as a franchise left tackle. He played in almost every single game, or he started almost every single game that he played in during his entire career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was kind of a starter from day #1, and he's kind of one of, if not the first, franchise left tackle the Buccaneers had. Honorable mentions go out to guys like Donald Penn, and maybe Donovan Smith. I'm not too sure about that one, but it certainly has to be mentioned that Paul Gruber was a franchise left tackle, and he might be the first and maybe the only franchise left tackle the Bucs have had. Penn's debatable. I would say Penn is, in my opinion, but Gruber was definitely a franchise left tackle for sure. And like I said, honorable mention to Donald Penn. He played a lot of years in Tampa Bay, and he logged a lot of games as well. And I almost put him on this list, but I went back, I looked at Paul Gruber's numbers and whatnot, and just the overall pedigree that he had. Consistently getting pretty decent awards. Just the pedigree of him being a 4th overall pick. I don't remember the last time the Bucs have spent a pick that high on an offensive lineman. But with Gruber here, he was able to go out there, just be a phenomenal talent. 1988 all the way into 1999. So he was definitely there in the Dungy era. He was definitely there right at the end. He played pretty much till the end of the Dungy era. He wasn't, obviously, Dungy came a little bit into Gruber's career, but he was able to play there the whole time. Like I said, played his entire career at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Actually ended up playing 183 games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that is 4th all-time, right behind Dave Moore. So, all in all, I really like Gruber. I wish that we had a player, because I went back and I looked through some stuff, and Dave Gruber was dominant. I wish we kind of had a left tackle as dominant as Dave Gruber was. Maybe Donovan Smith can mold himself into something like Gruber. Maybe not. I'm not too sure. I think he does have the potential to be like Gruber. But definitely wish we kind of had that kind of caliber offensive lineman, because we'd feel pretty nice about ourselves, if I'm being honest. But moving on to left guard, I actually decided to go with George Jarno. Now, I want to give a honorable mention to Frank Middleton, who's actually pretty high up on my list as well. He's kind of the only honorable mention because it's weird with these offensive linemen. There's not a whole lot of options. The Bucs aren't exactly known for their dominant offensive linemen. We do have some good options here. Don't get me wrong. We had some very, very good options for, you know, left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle. But the Buccaneers are more known for defensive players. And when we get into defensive players, oh, I'm sure this list will get all kinds of controversial. But George Jarno is your, you know, Buccaneers greatest of all time left guard, in my opinion. He played for the Buccaneers from 1979 all the way to 1987. So he was right there with guys like Doug Williams, guys like James Wilder, guys like Jimmy Giles, guys who I've mentioned on this list before. You know, George Jarno was there as well, and he was probably a contributing factor as to why a couple of these Bucs teams were actually pretty good for a couple of these seasons. Fun fact, actually, Jarno made an extra point at some point in his career. I can't remember the year, but at some point he made an extra point. I don't know if the stats website that I was on counted it as him like kicking an extra point, or maybe he just made a 2-point conversion. You know, he got the ball and ran it in for a 2-pointer. I have no idea, but I wish I had footage of that. I looked forever to find footage of that. I can't find it. If you guys can find it, link it in the comments. And please find it, because it sounded so funny to me, and I want to see that, because that reminds me of like Donald Penn-esque stuff, man, like, and Warren Sapp-esque stuff. I love it. But extra point aside, Jarno ended up playing in 4 playoff games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and fun fact, he actually wasn't drafted. He was an undrafted free agent, and we're going to be talking about a player later on who was also undrafted, so I kind of like the Bucs' ability in the past, and, you know, just in general, to get these undrafted free agents and just cultivate them and grow them into this starting caliber talent, especially with Jarno. You know, he ended up being this undrafted free agent, you know, kind of coming in, wasn't drafted. He ended up playing 109 games with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's crazy. It actually is 27th all time, so you can kind of see, like, how bad I was before this retcon, like, kind of like, oh, 109 games. Like, in the old way I was looking at it, 109 games probably would have been, like, what? Like 6th or something, but that's 27th. Still very impressive under most circumstances. I think it's the most ever by a left guard. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this is the most games played by a left guard ever for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So again, very impressive. After his time with Tampa Bay, though, Jarno would then go on to play for Atlanta for a year, and then he would go on to play for Houston for a year before retiring, and he actually just recently passed away in 2016, so rest in peace to him. However, I'm very happy that he was able to come in as an undrafted free agent and, you know, 1979, help out guys like James Wilder have a productive career in Tampa Bay, help out guys like Jimmy Giles and Doug Williams have a productive career in Tampa Bay. It was really cool, and it's actually pretty funny because the year Jarno retired, the year after Jarno retired, Paul Gruber came in for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that's actually kind of cool. You know, it's kind of like, oh, Jarno passes on the torch of being like a very dominant Buccaneers offensive lineman to Paul Gruber, and so on and so on. You know, I think it's really cool. And next on this list for the center position, we have a guy who actually played with Paul Gruber for almost actually all of his career, all of Paul Gruber's career. This man was here at center. It is Toni Mayberry. Now, Toni Mayberry is another guy who played his entire career for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He played from 1990 all the way to 1999. He retired the same year as Gruber. Imagine being the general manager for 1999 for the Tampa, or imagine just being a general manager in general, and you have a franchise center and a franchise left tackle both retiring in the same year. I'd be so mad. I mean, obviously you can't be mad at the players because they decide when they retire and whatnot, but I'd be like, oh crap, what do we do? Because Mayberry and Gruber were a very dominant combination of a center and a left tackle. Like I said, Gruber started in 1988, Mayberry started in 1990. They played together their entire careers. Mayberry only played a couple years less than Gruber. Now, Mayberry played in 4 playoff games, whereas only Gruber played in 2. What's interesting, however, is that Mayberry actually went to 3 Pro Bowls the final 3 years of his career. From 1997 to 1999, he made the Pro Bowl. He was a very dominant center and a very consistent center at that. You know, drafted in the 4th round in the 1990 NFL Draft, he started every single game that he played in, minus his rookie year where he only started in 1 game, but after that, he was the starter every single year, and he never missed a game. That's what I like about all these offensive linemen that I've listed here is that most of them, most of these guys that I've listed here, they haven't missed games, and that's what I love. And to be honest, there isn't really an honorable mention I can give for the center position because Mayberry is pretty much the only dominant center for the most part that the Bucs have had during the entirety of their existence as a team. I guess if you want me to give you an honorable mention, Jeremy Zudo, why not? But anyway, he played in 160 games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 160, that's a lot, and that actually ranks 6th all time. So the consistency that I like here is that a lot of these all-time great offensive linemen for the Buccaneers had played, over 100 games for the team, and, they just played their entire careers here, and it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. You got Gruber, who ended up getting 4th all-time with 183 games, and Mayberry's not far behind him, 6th all-time with 160. So you can just see that they played together. They were pretty dominant together, just overall. And they were a big reason why the Bucs went to the playoffs those few years and were just as good as they were during this time. It's very unfortunate that guys like Jarno, Gruber, Mayberry, and the other 2 guys on this list as well, it's unfortunate that they never reached a Super Bowl because they are pretty much, championship team caliber levels of talent. But moving on to the right guard position, this one might be a little bit controversial, and I got to give a shout out to Ian Beckles for this part because he was very close. He was very, very, very close on the list, but I decided to go with this guy because of just how underrated he is in my opinion. I thought he carved out a pretty nice career for himself with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it is David Joseph. Now, he was the first-round pick in 2006 NFL draft, and he spent all the way from 2006 all the way to 2013 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know that's not a whole lot of time. That's only, I believe, 7 years, but he was still actually pretty darn dominant while he was here. He was injury-prone, like I said. He did end up missing a handful of games due to injuries and whatnot, but he was still able to go to 1 playoff game in 2007 and make 2 Pro Bowls for this team, which is something that a right guard hasn't really done ever for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ian Beckles was the only guy who I can mention as an honorable mention, and he didn't really get any accolades or go to any playoff games, whereas David Joseph was able to get a couple of Pro Bowl selections as well as some playoff experience under his belt. So that's kind of what I like about Joseph. And like I said, very underrated, especially considering that in terms of overall right guard talent, there's not a lot there. You have Joseph, you have Ian Beckles. That's pretty much it. There wasn't a whole lot of other guys that I could find on this list who had played consistently for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a long period of time who were labeled as a right guard. I saw a handful of, a couple of left guards, a couple of centers, and a couple of right tackles. But overall, it was just Beckles or Joseph, and I decided to go with Joseph just because of, how underrated he was. A lot of people thought that he kind of sucked. I thought he did fine when he was able to stay healthy. That was kind of the one knock on Joseph, was that he wasn't able to stay healthy. He is a former first-round pick. He went to a couple of Pro Bowls, and he played in the playoff game, and I like him. So, David Joseph, greatest right guard all time for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That one's going to be controversial, though. And finally, at right tackle, this one's a little bit more interesting as well, because there's not very much overall talent at this offensive line position. Like I said earlier, the Buccaneers aren't exactly known for their dominant offensive lines. They're kind of more known for their dominant defenses. So for this one, I went with Delmar Dotson. And again, honorable mention is Jeremy Trueblood. Jeremy Trueblood versus Delmar Dotson. Not a lot of people liked Jeremy Trueblood. But anyway, Delmar Dotson has played his entire career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, coming on as an undrafted free agent in 2009, and he is still playing into 2018, and he could still be going. We don't know how long Delmar Dotson is going to play, but he does have an opportunity to kind of bump up his overall games with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, he is a one-time all-team pro. It was a second-team all-pro selection. And after that, he hasn't really had a whole lot of selections, be it Pro Bowls. He has no playoff experience. He has no any of these types of awards. He hasn't been to the playoffs. He hasn't been selected to a Pro Bowl. He's only been on one all-pro team. So, James, why did you select Delmar Dotson? Well, because especially recently, he's been selected as one of the top right tackles overall in the league. And just looking at that and looking at the past options, I decided to go with a more current option because I think he's underrated a little bit. He actually has played the most games ever I believe it's either the most games ever by a Buccaneers right tackle or the second most games ever by a Buccaneers right tackle with 100, which actually ranks 38th all time. So he's right behind Davin Joseph, but obviously give him one more season and he'll have the most games by right tackle by far. I think Jeremy Trueblood actually has one more game over him, so obviously give him 2 more games and he'll have the most games ever by a right tackle. And then it's kind of like the fact that he came in as an undrafted free agent and he's been able to be a starter for so long in his career. Like I said, from 2009 2018, he's been on the team. Most undrafted free agents don't even make a roster and they're out of the league just before they even get into the league. So for Dotson to come in as a rookie tryout guy at that and to play his whole career right now and be arguably, if not the best, the second best player on our current Buccaneers offensive line right now, and he's been the best Buccaneers offensive lineman for a while now, that speaks volumes to me, and I really respect Delmar Dotson, and he's right up there with Gruber, Jarno, Mayberry, and Joseph. He's right up there with them for me. But let me know what you think about all 5 of these guys down in the comment section below. I know this is kind of like short and I didn't exactly go into much detail about these guys because it's offensive linemen. I can't find stats on, how many pressures did Paul Gruber give up, or how much did how many sacks did Toni Mayberry give up, or George Jarno, or Davin Joseph, or Delmar Dotson. I can't find these stats just because it's kind of hard to classify those types of stats. I can only give you how many games they've played, how many games they started, accolades, Pro Bowl appearances, All-Pro team appearances, playoff games, stuff like that, and how long they played for the Buccaneers and how many games they started. That's kind of huge for me as well, is how many games you started and how many games you played in for the Buccaneers. So for left tackle, again, Paul Gruber, left guard, George Jarno, center, Toni Mayberry, right guard, Davin Joseph, and right tackle, Delmar Dotson. Let me know what you think about all 5 of these guys down in the comment section below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Again, let me know, please. If you have any suggestions for any types of videos that you would want to see, leave those in the comment section below as well. And follow me on Twitter. Like the Facebook page, join the Facebook group, and as always, guys, I will see you in the next video, but until then, goodbye for now, guys. See ya.